Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bella Esposito, and I'm the program coordinator for leadership programming here at Pitt, and I use the she, her, hers pronouns. I am very excited to welcome you to this Hesselbein Global Academy virtual session entitled Support Communities During Turbulent Times. Please note that this session is going to be recorded. Our presenter for this session is Lynn Priore. Ashley is an American chess player and coach, author and contributor, consultant, democratic strategist, entrepreneur, and media personality, currently serving as the founder, inaugural president, and CEO of Queen's Gambit, a national nonprofit using chess to teach strategic leadership and in turn give youth the tools they need to change the world. Ashley has been featured and recognized for her work using chess to combat society's biggest issues in Elite Daily, Katie Couric Media, Forbes, and USA Today. An awarded chess player in her own right, Ashley is known for her fierce leadership in creating gender equity in chess education. So thank you very much to Ashley for being with us today, and let's go ahead and get started.
Hey, well, thank you so much, Bella. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm Ashley, and I want to start out just by saying that, feel free to get in touch with me anytime. I love doing these sorts of events and mentor and mentee relationships. I've had so many wonderful mentors in my life, so please feel free to connect and reach out to me if you're interested. I was a Hesselbein fellow back in 2019, so when we were in person, and it was a wonderful experience. I had the best time, and you're going to get so much out of this program. As I'm sure you've already have. Hesselbein is one of those programs where you not only meet people who are influential and who support you in numerous ways, but you also get a chance to ask questions and really ignite your curiosity when it comes to civic engagement and really strategic leadership. This conversation here is going to be about supporting communities during turbulent times, supporting communities when there's so much going on. And I think we've all realized this right now as we have been, going through some really hard things as a country, right? And even personally, professionally, we're all are going through different things, especially given the trauma of, COVID-19. So I'm happy to be here today and to connect with you. And strategic leadership, my focus in this area came about because of Frances Hesselbein. She was really inspirational for me in this field and understanding the importance of being a strategic thinker, being a forward thinker, and asking questions when no one else is asking questions. So I'm excited to chat with you. And the first thing I want to do, this is going to be very discussion based, and I want us to feel free to ask questions. I want us to if you have anything you want to say, just feel free to share it out. You don't need to, raise your hand or anything. If you're more comfortable in the chat, that's great. All I ask is that when you do speak, just say your name again and your pronouns. My pronouns are she, her, hers. So first thing I just want to talk about is strategy. What is strategy? Feel free to put some thoughts in the chat, or if you want to say it now, but how do you define strategy? What is strategy? Give everyone a couple minutes here. And to give you a little bit of background, as a chess player, people say all the time that we are strategic, right? Chess is a strategic game. If you are a checkers player, people still say that, but chess players and checkers players don't necessarily get along. But for this time in our presentation, we will. I should ask too, just by show of hands or a reaction, does anyone here know how to play chess? You don't have to, know, but I'm just curious. Does anyone? No? Yeah. Awesome. And if you don't, that's totally fine. perfect. So someone put strategy is having a plan of action and trying to predict outcomes. Exactly, right? I love the idea of a plan, right? That's similar to where strategic planning comes in. Trying to predict outcomes. Someone else said for military, relationship among ends, ways, and means with consideration of risk, right? That's really good. The idea that you have to balance and determine the positives and the negatives. What are the risks? What are some of the things that might help you in the end? That's very good. And, you know, when we think of chess too, chess was started really as a military style game. It was to strategize about how you were going to win against your opponent, right? So a strategy, I like to say, is really a plan to achieve a goal. And what that goal is and what that plan is are up to you, right? That's how you come up with something. So maybe my goal is to, you know, if I'm interested in being a doctor, my end goal, that's my end goal. I want to be a doctor. The plan is, okay, what sort of path am I going to take? I know I'm going to go to school. I know I'm going to complete X, Y, and Z coursework, but am I going to do it at this hospital? Am I going to get other volunteer experience, right? It's not just one straight line, it's a zigzag. And that's something that people don't understand, right? Leadership should never be one line, right? It's never that. All of our amazing figures, especially like Frances Hesselbein, she would tell you too, leadership is certainly not a straight line. And if it is, then something must not be going right if it is a straight line. Okay. Now, strategic leadership is a little bit different, and feel free to shout it out or put it in the chat. What do you think strategic leadership is? We talked about strategy, but now we're bringing in that leadership component. Again, I'll give everyone a minute or two here. When you're answering this, I also want you to think about people in your life who you consider leaders, right? Leaders right off the bat, we might think of presidents as being leaders, right? We might think of, activists as being leaders, right? Just think about when I say the term leader, what's the first thing that pops into your head? A leader could also be, someone that in your life that you feel like's had an impact on you and the work that you do, right? So there's all different sorts of leaders and how we define that. I tend to stay away from specifically defining leadership itself because everyone has different ideas of what a leader is, right? And that's something that each of us has to come up with on our own. I'm not one to say, leadership is X, Y, and Z. I can give you a broad category and thought of what it is, but I believe everyone should come up with their own idea. Someone in the chat here said, coming up with a plan for a project or an initiative while taking into account everyone's strengths and weaknesses and deciding how to best align tasks and get everything done. I love that. That's exactly right. And we have another one here, establishing a vision or mission, and then leading others to get to that goal through planning and working together as a team. Exactly. Some common words I'm hearing in all of these are seeing. There's plans, right? There's goals, working together. We see strengths and we see weaknesses. I don't want you to view weakness as necessarily a bad thing. Some people turn it into the word opportunity, right? In any sort of plan we do, there's always going to be something that we need to work on, right? And if it weren't that way, leadership probably wouldn't be as fun because it would be very, very easy to, to get things done. Another thing here, influence process to achieve a vision, allocating resources, setting priorities to achieve mission and competitive advantage, building consensus among teams. Very good. I love that as well. We're coming up with that mission again. All of this is wonderful. And please feel free to keep putting things into the chat here. I view strategic leadership as somewhat of a marriage of sorts, right? So you have strategy or the plan to achieve a goal. Then there's strategic leadership, which in some cases is the ability to lead with a clear plan in mind. When I say clear plan, it doesn't mean that it doesn't have weaknesses, areas of opportunities, all of that. It just means that you have a broad direction in which you want to go. And I'm very excited that people put in here things about resources and mission and vision. We often see the term mission and vision in the nonprofit sector, right? When we say, you know, with Queen's Gambit, the organization that I run, our mission is to elevate a new generation of strategic leaders through the power of chess. That's our mission. That's what we're doing day in and day out. But our vision is a little bit different. Our vision is that long-term goal. Like, where do we want the organization to be? Because we're doing our mission, how is our mission going to actually get us to that final point? And that's a little bit different. That is, we envision a society where there's equitable, inclusive, and strategic leaders who are civically engaged. So this is wonderful. The reason I spend so much time on this is because when we're talking about impacting communities, supporting communities, we really need to have a firm definition for ourselves of what strategic leaders are, right? Leadership is something that everyone is capable of, but the ability to be a strong leader or a leader who makes an impact, you have to be strategic. You have to be able to look ahead and determine what goals, opportunities, all of the things that are going to come your way. Think about it as forward thinking. When I think of a strategic leader, I think of a strategist, right? Someone who is skilled in planning different action steps, right? That's a term that not a lot of people use. You might hear democratic strategist. You might hear media strategist, right? All that means is that someone who is skilled in planning action steps. And if you are, applying for a job, looking at different opportunities, I encourage you to think about using the word strategist in a descriptor of yourself, because I think it's a very powerful word. Maybe consider, if your major is marketing and communications, right? You are a strategist. It doesn't matter how old you are, right? You're a strategist because you are someone who understands that you need a plan and have action steps. I also think strategic leadership is about being a visionary, right? Someone who is able to think about the future in a creative way. I pause at creative because oftentimes people view themselves as either creative or as just very mathematical and formula set, right? It's very rare that people say that they're both. They say, I'm more of this person than that person. With chess, we say it's like the left and the right side of the brain, right? You can be creative and utilize that side, but you can also be very, people used to tell me it was you're very academic, right? You're very structured, and both are great to have, right? Some people say that being very structured could be a downside, but we're both of those things, right? It's great that we have both of those things. I say, think about the future in a creative way, because when we're a visionary, it's about where we want to be. So if your goal as an individual is to create a more civically engaged world, right? That is your vision. That's where you want the world to be. And that's a very exciting opportunity. And it's creative because everyone is going to have different visions of what they want the world to be. I think of creative as different ideas, having different views and ideas about something, right? So we know that a strategic leader is a strategist. We know that they're a visionary, right? The other thing a strategic leader is, and this is something that I'm sure you've talked about, because I remember with the Hesselbein program, they went over different types of leaders, right? There was servant leaders, there's philanthropic leaders, all different sorts of leaders. The other thing is you also need to be a coach. And when I say coach, you probably this is what I think of. I think of sports, right? A coach, right? Coach on different teams, right? Or there's different life coaches out there, people who are just very good at encouraging others to do something or achieve something. The reason I say coach is because I want you to think of people in your life who have encouraged you and say, hey, you can do this. This is awesome. This is something that you are really strong at, and you have the ability to empower people. One of my favorite organizations out there is the Obama Foundation. And the reason I love the Obama Foundation is because their view of the world is that every single person has the ability to change the world. Everyone has the ability. They have the ability in themselves to change the world. Now, do they have the opportunity to? That's different, right? Because we're talking about being equitable, right? There are students who don't have the resources, typically financial, to create big change in the world, right? But they have the ability in themselves. They have that visionary component. So being a coach is saying to someone, hey, I think that you have this ability to do something, right? I want my team to know that I believe in them to do X, Y, and Z. So a strategic leader needs to be able to visualize their goal, what they want, the world to be, what they want their project to look like. I want you to think about a strategic leader as, not just someone who's like fighting something very, very big, like world hunger, but also someone who is maybe doing something on a smaller scale, right? Thinking about an example, I had a friend who was very passionate about funding for her school. It was a local school. And she really worked hard in creating a plan with very little resources in her backyard or just very, very locally. So she was a strategic leader because she visualized her goal. She developed a plan to get there, and she encouraged her team and herself and others working on the project, to do that, to achieve that vision or goal. So a strategic leader could be someone like very big who's handling tons of things like a president, but it could also be someone who is doing things at a local level. And I want you to remember that the work that you're doing at a local level is just as important as the work that's happening nationally, because things that can't happen nationally if they don't happen locally first, right? When I say finding your strategy, I use this idea called LEAD, right? I remember when I was writing this or coming up with it, I was so impressed with myself because I had this acronym for this thing. It's really nothing new, but it might help you a little bit as you're planning through your next stage. All of you are in college, right now? Undergrad and graduate? I forget what the also on. I think it's both. So you're looking at the future. When I'm looking at this presentation, it's about supporting your community in turbulent times. In order to support your community, you need to know how to find, identify, and solve problems. So I want you to think about something called LEAD, right? The L stands for leverage, right? You need to be able to leverage your positive qualities and the qualities that you think make you an effective leader. You need to be able to leverage them and use them. You need to E, examine, right? Examine a situation, look through it. Similar, with chess players, we look at a position, we study it, we examine it, and we try to figure out the next best steps. And that's the A in the LEAD. Articulate your goals. So examine the situation, figure out what's wrong, and articulate, be very, very specific with the goals that you want to do. And then finally, the D in LEAD is discuss. Share your plan, right? Plans for changing your community or changing the world, etc., only happen when you share them, right? You need to make sure that other people in the community know because they're stakeholders, right? So you might have this really great idea to make change. Don't just keep it to yourself, right? Share it out and ask for feedback, ask for advice, see who else wants to get involved in the movement. That's part of what a strategic leader is. So last year when we did a presentation for Hesselbein, I remember after I talked about, being a strategic leader, it was focused on COVID. So I tasked everyone in the room to imagine that you were a university leader and you were tasked with deciding whether or not schools should go back into person. And I wanted you to think about, what are the really positive qualities about your school? Like, was it that you have really great technology and that you have a lot of open space so people could social distance themselves? I had people think about like the situation, examine it. Maybe you're a school that just doesn't have a lot of money to have every student have a laptop, right? Thinking about all of the different problems behind it and everything. Articulate the goal. In the end, what do you want to make the university achieve? A lot of people wanted schools to go back in person when we did this activity. And then finally, discuss it, share your plan, etc. Similar to like when the chancellor might share their plan about a school going back in person with their board, okay? But I want to do something a little bit different. And I want to ask everyone to consider a problem that is impacting your community now and go through that process of lead. You don't have to write anything down unless you want to. You don't have to say, okay, leverage, examine, articulate, discuss. You don't have to be as specific, but I want you, and maybe we can do some groups here. I want us to split up and as an individual group, determine what's a problem that's impacting the community. It could be something very, very broad as, I'm thinking about current events, Roe v. Wade, right? Or it could be something smaller, still significant and important, but in your local community. Maybe people are cutting down trees, right? Where I live right now, very close to Pitt, I'm on Ellsworth Avenue. Tons of trees are getting cut down, tons of them. Not only is it super loud, right? And when you live in an apartment that's close to the ground and you're trying to do meetings and it's very loud cutting of trees, right? There's that. But also, trees, impact of nature and the environment, climate change, all those good things. So think about a problem. And during this process about how you might solve or approach the problem, you'll realize that you actually are a strategic leader because you are strategizing, you're envisioning a future, and you're being a coach because you're supporting people in your team. So I think we could maybe give like 10 minutes for this, and then we can come back and chat a little bit. So I'm going to ask if Bella could help me with this. We could just split up maybe 2 groups, do we think?
Yeah, I can do 2 groups.
Yeah, that would be great because then we could have 3 each.
All right, the room should now be open.
Awesome. And I can come in and be in and out if you need me. Awesome. Thank you.
Of course. Also, I have to just say, you're a fantastic presenter.
Oh, thank you. That's so nice.
You're welcome.
Sometimes I feel like I ramble.
I wouldn't say you ramble. I think you add very, very appropriate context to every piece that you're providing.
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you.
You're welcome. I also really loved your acronym. I think that's so incredibly helpful.
Oh, great. Thank you. I remember when I was writing it down, I was like, ooh, I thought it was the coolest thing ever. Then I realized I feel like a lot of people probably have different things for that, but in the moment, it's like you're trying to find the words that'll fit in.
It's also cool to do something like that yourself because we always see other people having these acronyms that everyone ends up thinking about, but to do that yourself it's a little proud moment.
Definitely, because the first acronym I learned was PEMDAS, and I hated that.
Yeah.
I'm horrible at math. So that was definitely not one of my favorites.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed.
Probably wait to go check on them until like 1:30 because I know how awkward it can be when you're coming up with ideas.
Oh yeah, in the beginning of it all.
Doing that COVID exercise last year was so interesting because you could tell people just wanted to go back. There was, I think, one group. It was a smaller group because I think we had like 3 groups and there were like 2 people in each maybe. Mm-hmm. And like 2 of the groups were like in person, all this stuff. And the other group was who went last was like, we said we wanted to stay online. And they had a really good point because I think they had a school that I gave them like very specific types of schools each.
Oh, that's cool. That's good.
And their school was small and it was in a county that had tons of COVID cases and everything. And it was just really interesting because they somewhat felt this sort of like peer pressure to say like, oh, of course we're going to go back in person, but they knew based on the situation that like what they wanted versus what they had to do was very different.
I wish I was able to sit down on that because it's so interesting to think about in a situation like that, navigating what you want personally and then what everyone else wants and then what's actually the best course of action because it's impossible to satisfy everyone.
Exactly.
And even if you think you make the right choice, you absolutely could make the incorrect one.
Exactly. And people are going to blame you either way.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely.
That's something that I feel like we don't get enough training in at school of when you're a leader, you have to separate the decisions you make from who you are as a person because people are going to like attack a decision you make and you're going to feel awful about yourself. And I know like different like elected officials who are new like talk about that where they're like, I felt like I was a terrible person for doing this thing, but it turned out like I had to separate my feelings.
That's such a huge point, and you're completely correct. We don't really talk about that, and how even if it is the right decision or like it's morally correct, there's still going to be a very loud group that's unhappy. Right. And sometimes you only hear the people who are unhappy and you don't hear the people who are supporting you and agreeing with you.
Exactly.
It's tough being a leader.
Exactly. It is tough. And like people, I wish there was more like empathy training in schools.
One thing that I am hearing a lot more in like leadership conversations, at least that I've heard, is adding in an empathy piece or even just a emotional intelligence piece, which I feel like was almost like avoided in a lot of leadership conversations before. But post-COVID, I'm hearing it so much more often, and I think it's such a good change.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah.
Because it's definitely not talked about.
Oh, no. It's definitely not.
And it's scary, too, sometimes when people can't define the word empathy. I've had that happen where it's like, they just don't know what that means. And it just shows that like, okay, well, this was never taught in school. So it makes sense that people know what it means.
And it's wild because you think that's something that you wouldn't need to explicitly teach someone.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Oh,
It's so
yeah.
scary.
I think we need a lot more empathy, especially given where we are in the world right now.
Yeah. And like, if people, like, I always say, like, people shouldn't feel bad about saying, hey, I really don't feel comfortable meeting in person, or hey, I need to cancel, just not because I, am sick or whatever. I just don't really have the energy right now.
Yeah, like I don't have that mental capacity in the moment. Yeah. I agree.
Send an announcement here saying like 2 more minutes.
You have access to be able to do that, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
I had to do the breakout groups because I feel like every time I try to do them, something gets messed up.
For some reason, it's almost weirdly hard to do breakout rooms correctly.
Exactly. Like for the first 2 months on Zoom, I couldn't even find it. I was like, where in the world is this? And I'm like, oh, there's 3 buttons on the side that say more.
Yep.
That's helpful.
Yep. I had a very similar experience.
Okay, I think we can go ahead and close the rooms here.
You got it.
This meeting is being recorded.
All right, thank you. All right.
Everyone should be back from their room now.
Perfect. Okay, so I hope that was good activity, and I know that we could talk a long time about all of this, but for those who are comfortable, and you can do it in the group chat if you're not comfortable speaking, could you share maybe what you talked about, like what the community problem was and the process that you went through?
I'll volunteer Meryl first. Go ahead, Meryl.
In our group, we were talking, one of the problems in my community is I've been trying to encourage people to compost. Throughout the year, I was just talking with other students. I just graduated high school, so this is at a pretty small scale throughout the year, but
Congratulations.
Thank you. I was just talking with other students and trying to educate them on composting. And I'm hoping to bring that to more of a wider scale in my neighborhood and see if I can get a composting service to come through, maybe door to door. So using the acronym, we're talking about L, I can leverage my organizational and communication skills. E, examining the situation. I think that my neighborhood would respond well to a service like this. We already have, recycling, everyone participates in that and seems to be really focused on environmental issues. So I think this would be a really good initiative that people would respond to. And then articulating this goal, I think it would probably be best articulated to our neighborhood association, who could maybe have a drop-off center at their office where people could bring things, or just have the ability to have that on a wider scale. And then for discuss and sharing the plan, I'd definitely share with my neighbors, my friends within my neighborhood, and of course the neighborhood association, who has the power to really enact this plan that I'm hoping can happen.
Awesome. And you were in a group with Chuck?
Yeah.
So, this is great. Awesome. I love that. It's exactly right. And it's amazing too that there's so many. I know you said like it's on a really local level, but you're so right. I mean, if you can come up with a plan locally, that could be implemented nationally. I love that. And so are you getting ready for college, or what's your next journey?
Yeah, I'm going to be going to Tulane in the fall.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so cool. I had a couple friends who went there. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And what are you majoring in? Do you know yet?
Environmental science.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, then that's perfect. And there's like so many levels too that you can look at. You can look at, we call it like a community asset map, where you have the problem in the middle. And coming out of that, you might have one bubble to think about would be, okay, who are the community groups that could help me with this? Can we have every like nonprofit get a bin to help with anything related to the environment? Another bubble coming off of that, and the other problem is like the policy around it. Could the government pay for those? Could the government enforce those? Right. And that gets into like city council work. That's on a local level. A bubble off of that would be statewide. There's some statewide initiatives of it, but it depends on the state that you're in. Because it can be, where are you from?
I'm from Dublin. It's close to Columbus, Ohio.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So Ohio would be probably a lot more locally, more local laws compared to on a state level. And then, you might have other bubbles coming off of that, or there, environmental folks who can help. I love that. And exactly, I mean, you're a strategist, right? You came up with that. That was part of being a strategic leader, right? And you can take that idea and bring it to people who are in other positions of power to say, hey, how can we work together, and how can we help this? That's awesome. Okay, what about the other group? What'd you guys come up with? Feel free to, if you're not comfortable saying, you can do it in the chat.
I guess we kind of looked at more of a general problem, I guess, facing our world, which definitely is the issue of like unemployment and people really looking for jobs and kind of really struggling right now with that. Mm-hmm. And so we kind of first looked at starting more like a community fund and pairing people, maybe like a foundation, and pairing people with mentors to help them get kind of different skills they need for maybe even looking for a different job or something along those lines. And we also thought a great way to kind of spread this in the community and get awareness was using social media, which is a great platform to really get people to know like what your message is, not just on community, but also really around the world, which is pretty awesome. We also thought of doing like fundraisers and really kind of expanding kind of people's worldview. So that was kind of like what we discussed, more of like a larger issue and more of like a kind of like a broader solution in general.
That's awesome. I love that. And it's something that it's so critical after COVID, right? I mean, we can look at it before and after COVID. I love the idea of a fund. Then again, you look at the community asset mapping bubble, and you could say coming out of that might be local groups that help with unemployment, resume building. A lot of libraries help with that. But like another bubble might be foundations. Do they have any resources or things that they could do? And then there's the policy bubble. You'll find that whenever we're doing these strategic leadership sorts of discussions, it's all encompassing. So it doesn't necessarily matter what field you're interested in, right? I'm on the political track, right? So I'm into that realm. So when I look at a problem, I first think about it in terms of, well, what can legislation do? But if you are a nonprofit leader, you might look at it as, okay, what can we as an organization who has connections with foundations, donors, and other community groups do? So you want to think about it in that way. Christina, what's your major?
I'm actually an atmospheric science major. So yeah, but I really definitely want to get into, I actually started a website for kids in my local community in high school, and it basically provided tutoring for them. And my kind of issue was that I wanted to address inequities in education, because obviously there's a lot of issues with that in terms of access, especially for women and minorities, a lot of unequal access. So I kind of wanted to address that issue. So I started a tutoring program to help kids learn math, science, even English too. We had a couple kids that were actually were learning English. So it was kind of really cool seeing their journey of kind of learning, because they were Spanish speakers and from Spanish speaking households. So that was kind of really cool seeing that. I kind of did it on a really local scale with like a couple handful of kids, but I definitely thought that the idea of strategic leadership is really awesome, because I like how like it's all these bubbles that are you can really use to expand that idea. So yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so cool. Congratulations. So cool. Yeah, everyone. I mean, I'd love to stay in touch. I'm keeping an eye on time since I know we have a little less than a minute here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my email in the chat here. Feel free to reach out. I'd love to connect, especially if you have an initiative that you're doing and there's ways that we can help. One of the things I'm really passionate about is that idea of networking and how we can get you connected to the people that you want to be connected with. So if anyone has any ideas, project ideas, if you need funding for something, there's great resources out there, especially for young leaders. So please feel free to get in touch. It was amazing talking with everyone. And if you want any other resources, do let me know. Find me on LinkedIn, any social media. I love my Twitter account. I'm always on there posting very feminist things. So if you like that, go give it a give it a follow. But please feel free to reach out. And if you have any questions, let me know as well.
All right, I want to thank Ashley so much for taking the time to present today and sharing some incredible wisdom about leadership and strategic leadership with everyone. Also, thank you very much to the participants who participated in this session. I do just want to send a reminder that there will be a post-summit survey sent to you through your email at the end of the sessions today. And I also suggest taking your break before your final session today as well. Thank you all again, and have a great rest of your summit.